Little button is down. Y'all know for the purposes of my canning series that I only follow USDA guidelines. I don't do rebel canning on the videos. That is to protect me from people who might do something that is considered a rebel canning situation and they mess it up and they want to come after me. To avoid all of that, I follow USDA guidelines for this series. If you want to branch out on your own after that, help yourself, by all means go for it. I do a lot of rebel canning myself, but to start you need a firm foundation. You need to know where to look and what to do, and that is why I made these series. Now, we talked about yesterday why you don't want to store your food with the rings on them. All right, I've got a ring right here. What I mean by that is you do not want to store your food like this. And there's several reasons for that, okay? This lid, you can tell the little indent, there's a little button in the middle, it is pushed down. You should not be able to pull this off very easily, okay? This should not be able to be lifted and that lid pop off. When I say you're doing a lift test, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You are lifting this jar by the lid. If it is secured and it's not going anywhere, that is a good indication that you've got a good seal. Now, what happens if you store these on here? If something did happen and you lose that seal, you're not going to know because this is holding it down and preventing the air from really filling this up. And when I say really filling this up, yesterday, if you go back and you watch my video, you'll see it. I had a jar that the little button was down, but air had gotten into it. I picked it up and it went and the lid popped right off. It still made that noise, which for most people is a good indication that you still had a good seal, but it did not. The discoloration in that food tells me that it had already turned. The food that I'm talking about was pickled peaches that has a high acidity because of the vinegar that's put into it. Bacteria does not prefer high sugar, high salt, or high acidity foods. That does not mean that it won't grow. It can still grow in that environment. Botulism also does not like that environment, but it can grow in it. It does not like oxygen. Botulism thrives in no or low oxygen. You're dealing with a catch-22. No oxygen, low oxygen, botulism loves it. Air getting in allows for other bacteria to grow. So this is why when you're canning, you have to get your food up to a specific temperature, which is only sustainable through pressure canning or water bath canning. And that temperature completely depends on your elevation. Water boils at different temperatures depending on your elevation. When this becomes superheated, and we're talking over 240 degrees, that is where you get that really good seal. If it isn't a pressure canner, your water level's down here, it gets really, really hot in that pressure canner. You keep it at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. It kills all bacteria that's in the food. As it starts to cool down, the ring is loose. That is a good indicator that you have a good seal. I had somebody tell me that they live down in Florida and they are just told to retighten that lid. The reason you don't want to do that is that puts pressure on the edges of your lids and can actually cause that to come up. Let's say you cinch it down and you actually release that seal, you're not going to know because that ring is holding it on. Air is slowly trickling in, and that's all it takes is one tiny little bit of that for this to become contaminated. So that is why we store them without. Now, is that an everyday thing? Does that mean 100% of the time if you put your rings on that's going to happen? No, not at all. When I first started canning, I left my rings on for the first year of canning and I never had that happen. After learning the situations and that there is a risk of that happening, I just stopped. I don't want that risk involved. I would really hate to cinch that down or put it on there really good, store it away, and then I lose $600 or $700 in food because of something like that. Or even if it's just one can is just one can too many after the labor intensive work that you put into this. And yesterday's as well, that little button was still pushed in. Even after I took the lid off, I manually popped it back out. When that happens, like I said yesterday, when in doubt, throw it out. I chucked that whole thing. I kept the jar, I kept the ring, I toss the lid. And that is what I do every single time. But that's one of the reasons you really don't want to store with this, because if it does break that seal, you're not going to know until you're ready to use that food. I'm fixing to use this in dinner, and right now would be the worst time possible to find out that this food has gone bad. I don't want to be right in the middle of dinner and now I have to change my plans because the food that I had has gone bad. So what should it sound like? It should sound like that. And a good one. All right. Now this one, you can tell my little button, it did pop up. Smell test. It smells like turkey. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Lift test. Nothing's wrong with it. For those of you wondering, this is just fat. Fat adds to the flavor, and then broth into it. All right, I canned these raw. Same thing, so it's fine. Lift test is good. Yep, not coming off. Little button is down. Now, this is a perfect example. Do you see that button? That button is still down. That's what happened yesterday when my thing went bad. I'm going to pop it up. You ready? The buttons don't always pop. So you cannot rely on that as an indicator that your seal is broken, because it won't always do that. I really hope this video has helped you guys out. I'm going to make some delicious dinner, and I will talk to y'all later.